We are the United States of America. We never don't see race. We see race. We are being gaslit to pretend for some reason that the first time a Black and Indian woman is running for president, her race had nothing to do with the outcome and her gender had nothing to do with the outcome.
Welcome to The Stakes. I'm Brad Rourke with the Charles F. Kettering Foundation. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan operating foundation that focuses on advancing and defending inclusive democracy. Today, I'm talking with Sherrilyn Ifill, the Vernon E. Jordan Jr. Esquire Endowed Chair in Civil Rights at Howard University. Sherrilyn Ifill, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
It's good to see you. There's so much to talk about right now, but I want to start with a piece you wrote recently on Substack, which points out that the many postmortems on the recent election have been largely silent on race and identity. Say more about that.
Yeah, it's been really frustrating. And I've been really alarmed by the number of pieces that started out. First of all, the analysis started the morning after the election, which seemed shocking to me because we didn't know very much at that time. We knew the outcome, but we didn't know very much. And I did feel there was kind of almost an industry created urgency to begin to do analysis even without good information or a moment to reflect on what happened. What concerned me more is that as the week and then weeks went on, there were questions about, podcasts and whether Kamala Harris should have gone on Joe Rogan. There were issues, countless pieces about the frustrations of young men. There were pieces about whether or not Democrats, communicate effectively with the working class. In fact, the entire theme of the analysis was that this was a kind of what I call Damascus Road moment for the Democratic Party. And this seemed shocking to me when, in fact, I thought there were much more important and urgent stories and questions that we should be pursuing. And the pursuit of those questions compels us to think about issues of race and gender. We had the first Black and Indian woman running as the major party candidate for president of the United States. And somehow that doesn't figure into the analysis of this, what really was surprising loss. We had an opponent whose entire defense team from when he first served as president, including the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his chief of staff, his former defense secretary, who said he was unfit to serve and a threat to our country and the world and a threat to democracy. And a majority of white voters, this we did know, voted in favor of Donald Trump. And this strikes me as shocking. This wasn't an issue about tweaking a campaign to talk about a particular issue or appear on a particular platform. These people voted for Donald Trump. And, white voters are the majority in this country still, with all the talk about potential demographic shifts by 2030. And I think we as Americans should be asking ourselves what it means when a majority of the electorate in our country is willing to vote for someone who declared his intentions to be a dictator, and who in the last 3 weeks of the campaign engaged in such incredibly ugly, racist, misogynist language and talk, that's the question. It's really the spotlight, in my view, should not be on Harris. And the question before us is not one about the Democratic Party. It's about America. It's about the United States. And what has happened that a majority of voters turn their backs on democracy, a majority of white voters in particular. So that's where I thought the analysis should be, because the Damascus Road we're facing is a Damascus Road for American democracy, not for the Democratic Party. I'm concerned about acquiescence. I'm concerned about the fact that the failure to adequately and effectively diagnose the significance of this election, which is not just one candidate won and the other lost, or the Republicans won and the Democrats lost. It is that this particular candidate, with all that he represents, that a majority of voters were willing to vote for him. And I think it's significant that it's a majority of white voters, because on the scale of those who feel most beset by the problems of our democracy, I don't think white voters are at the top.
So it's why did one side prevail, not why did the other side
And
lose?
what does it say about the voters given the flaws of this candidate? There are so many takes. There are literally dozens of takes among our major, well respected pundits and political observers. And there's less than a handful of them that center on issues of race and gender, even though they're staring us right there in the face. We are the United States of America. We never don't see race. We see race. We see race. And so I just think we are being gaslit to pretend for some reason that the first time a Black and Indian woman is running for president, her race had nothing to do with the outcome and her gender had nothing to do with the outcome. That is irresponsible to not really wrestle with those things. There is a growing, once again, sense that talking about race is somehow either verboten or lacking in rigor, when in fact it's a very difficult subject to talk about. I understand it. But I've come to believe that most of the well known pundits simply lack the expertise to talk about it, and so they choose to ignore it. But that doesn't make it not significant. And so if we're going to go forward, I think we need to be having hard conversations. I think we need to be brave. And I think we need to be inviting multiple areas of expertise around the table to talk about how we go forward as a country. This is not the time to engage in denial and to allow our blind spots to prevail.
I want to shift gears slightly. There's something called Project 2025. It's been in the news. It continues to be
Yeah.
in the news. It's a comprehensive plan spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation, which lays out an agenda for, I guess, a so-called conservative, but mostly a nationalistic America. It was denied by the campaign prior to the election. Now it appears to be the blueprint moving forward. What are you watching in terms of concrete plans that have you concerned?
What concerns me about Project 2025 is that it is an extremist playbook. And it is a playbook that is centered around the idea that government is bad and must be eliminated. And in particular, we're talking about the federal government. Now, I'm a civil rights lawyer, and that rings alarm bells all over the place because the protection of civil rights, particularly for Black people, is constitutionally assigned to the federal government. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution and the 15th Amendment gives Congress the power to enforce the protections afforded to Black people in those two amendments. And Congress has done a number of things to do that. It has created agencies and sub-agencies. It has passed civil rights statutes. All our civil rights statutes emanate from those provisions of the Constitution, all Congress's responsibility. We forget sometimes that the Department of Justice was created in 1870 for the purpose of creating a legal apparatus for the federal government to enforce the protection of the rights of Black people, not for antitrust, not for tax, not for the environment, not for any of those things. It was created to create a federal legal apparatus for the protection of Black people's citizenship rights. So when you hear about Project 2025, when you see the cutting of the federal government, for those who know their history, they know what was the devastating consequence of Woodrow Wilson's actions towards the civil service regime of the federal government, which was the loss by many, many Black people of their jobs and of their status within the federal government. And so when people talk about cutting the federal workforce, nearly 30% of the federal workforce are people of color, Black people mostly. So we're talking about the loss of jobs, which means the loss of home ownership, which means the loss of land, which means the loss of generational wealth, and so on and so forth. When leaders tell you that they want to return particular functions to the states, alarm bells go off for civil rights lawyers. We know what that means, return it to the states. This is an ongoing battle in this country. This is what the Civil War was fought over. And as I said, the result of that was that the Union won, and Congress passed three constitutional amendments, putting in the power of the federal government the protection of various rights, citizenship rights. And we've been continuing that battle ever since. This is the battle of Brown versus Board of Education. This is the states' rights battle. And we used to understand what states' rights meant. Maybe we do understand it now, but it's become normalized and sanitized. And so that's what I see in Project 2025. And everyone should be deeply alarmed by this blueprint and by the willingness to carry it forward.
I was going to say that this is an alarming view of what's to come. In your mind, what must now happen in order to push back?
It's really tough. I don't believe that we have the power in any of our branches of government. The core of our three branches of government that will protect this country against the threat of something like Project 2025. That's dismaying because it's not going to be easy to say, well, we should just, do this and Congress should just do this, because we have seen already so much acquiescence. And I would say that even seeing President-elect Trump's nominees for various positions in the government is yet another window into what we're facing, because you only pick people who are unfit and incompetent to manage an organization if you want to break down that organization. If you're uncaring about whether that organization survives, whether its integrity remains intact, right? And so I think what needs to happen now is that people need to not feel cowed by the outcome of the election, as though they are supposed to stop standing for the things that they stood for on November 4th, right? If you believe in equality and justice, then you have to keep fighting for those things. And you have to keep insisting that your representatives fight for them. I've been telling people that please keep calling your senators, please keep calling your representatives, not only the ones who you think you can convince, but even the ones you can't convince. Do not go quietly into that dark night. Don't make this easy for them. If you hold that position, you're taking that salary, you're getting that pension and all the things that you're getting, the free haircuts in the Senate barbershop. I think you have to do your job. And the only way they're going to do their job is if we demand that they do it. So I think we have to not be cowed. We have to carry on as though we have the expectation of democracy and the expectation of representation, no matter what. And that means we do all the things that we do. We rally, we make, phone calls, we write to our Congress people, we speak, we educate. I think this is critically important. But I also think that this moment calls for us to really attend to building our local strength. And that means building in our communities local political strength, to undergird public institutions in our communities that are the building blocks of democracy, to educate ourselves about what is happening in this country, and to not check out. Check out of the madness and the distractions, but don't check out of the work of being a citizen in a democracy. One of the reasons I'm launching the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy at Howard Law School is because I think so many people don't know this history. The people who drafted and ratified the 14th Amendment, were facing a broken country, a divided country that was being stitched together, first by a president who was then assassinated, and they had to go forward and figure out how to do that. And their courage is an inspiration to us. And so I've been calling on people to imagine themselves as founders and framers of a new American democracy.
To think of ourselves as founders and to expect democracy. I can't think of a better way to end a wonderful conversation. Sherrilyn Ifill, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Brett.